like to call a January meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. I'd like to go over some of the procedures real quick. The chairman will announce each case and ask any party having an interest in the case. Oh, I should ask the roll first. I keep forgetting that. Paul, would you like to call the roll first before we do any business?
Alan Brown.
Present.
Jennifer Bourne. Heather Clemmer.
Present.
Neela Creighton Clements.
Present.
Greg Eddington.
Present.
George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Jeffrey Parks.
Present.
And Ann Zacharitz.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Well, thank you. So back to the procedures. The chairman will announce each case and ask any party having interest in the case to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will then discuss the details of the case, calling on staff to provide details of the proposals. Following discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of the applicant, the staff, and any other interested party. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between the applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to present their position as succinctly as possible. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. And then afterwards, when an application has been approved and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. And then finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals must be made within 10 days of the Commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the Clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Okay, so that's procedures, and I'd like for you also to turn off your cell phones, and Commission also, and let's get started. Office of the Historic Preservation Officer.
The agenda says nothing. I was going to briefly introduce, we have an intern with the Historic Preservation Program in the Planning Department, Eric Hill, and he's getting his Master's in Urban Planning at OU, so he's just recently joined us. I wanted to give everyone an update on the demolition criteria for the other design review districts that you came to a meeting about a few months ago, that those will start going to those other design review bodies this week. They'll go to Riverfront Design first and then make their way through the other committees for recommendations. That will have to go through a lengthy review process, just like our ordinance amendment did, through Planning Commission to City Council. So there's lots of opportunity for additional public input, but it's going to start making its way through all those meetings. Something we want to start mentioning at every meeting for applicants is that the June meeting will actually be on May 29th, and the deadline for the June meeting will be April 30th, and this is different from our standard monthly schedule. So just want people to be aware well in advance that those deadlines are going to be changing. And that's everything.
Is that it? Okay. Thank you. Item 3, acceptance of minutes of previous meeting. Are there any comments or corrections or a motion on the minutes?
Move to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Jeffrey Parks and seconded by Ann Zacharitz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. On to item 4, code enforcement report. Do we have anybody here?
I don't think we have anyone today. If you have any questions about what's in the report, just pass those along to Angela or myself, and we can follow up on those.
Okay. It's going to go quick. Item 5, continuance, announcements, and requests.
We have, I guess we will vote on each of these separately. We have 3 requests that were on the agenda, and then we have 1 new request for continuance. So 14-00144 has requested a continuance to the February meeting. 14-204 has requested continuance to February as well. All three are for February, so
To February?
February 4th.
You could take these individually?
It's on the agenda as one item, so unless there's comment from the audience, you could take the item.
Any comments on the continuance announcements, requests? Okay, so we can approve them all at once.
Okay, since there's not
Somebody like to move that?
I move to continue all three items to the February 4th meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Neela Crane Clements and seconded by Heather Clemmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, continuances are approved.
Then we have one new request for continuance, and that's 14-00241. That is at 433 Northwest 26th Street, and that's also for the February.
Yep, there it is. Okay. Anybody would like to talk about that one? Anybody like to move approval of that continuance?
I move to continue case 14-00241 to the February 4 meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Neela Craig Clements and second, excuse me, second by Heather Clemmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's been continued. All right, on to the consent. No, wait a second. Public hearings, dilapidated structures, National Register nomination, consent docket cases. Anybody like to talk about any of those individually? Or a
And I
motion?
would move to approve the consent docket.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Jeffrey Parks and second by Neela Crane Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent docket is gone. And now, on to individual cases, item D.
So if your application was on that consent docket, then you are approved and you are free to go. There won't be any further discussion of your application, and you'll get a certificate of appropriateness in approximately 10 days, just so that people don't sit through the rest of the meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, HPCA 14-00172 at 205 Northwest 32nd Street, Edgemere Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of William Jefferson by Ben Ramsey for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install fence required, 5, replace front and east side doors required, 7, replace garage door required, and 11, construct outdoor kitchen required.
Okay, is the applicant present? No? The staff has recommended denying items 157, 11 out of continuances. Basically correct?
Right. We've seen this application twice already. At the last meeting, had requested several revisions, but have yet to receive anything from that applicant. So at this point, unless the commission wants to approve what's been submitted thus far, our only other option is to deny the application.
Was there any communication from the applicant at all?
We haven't heard anything from them since that last meeting.
So since the applicant's not here,
I'm ready to move denial of this application. Katie, you don't say whether it's with or without prejudice. I assume it's with.
I think we could do it without prejudice because they could come back and, at the last meeting, it seemed like there was a fairly doable solution to make some changes and get to a point where it could be approved. So I'm not sure why we haven't had more communication with them, but I think they could come back and apply anew.
sort of like a continuance to...
So without prejudice, they can come back with the same application.
Yeah.
Well, or I
Edits
guess
to
it could be with prejudice, and therefore they would have to come back and apply for what we asked for to begin with.
So it's not...
So-
Yeah, because that would be a different application.
Okay. Then I move to deny with prejudice item HPCA 14-00172, items 1 5, 7, and 11, with the specific finding that the proposed work will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district or property, is not consistent with the provisions of the guidelines, and is not in compliance with the relevant sections of Municipal Code 2010 as referenced in the specific findings in Section D of the staff report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Neil Craig Clements and seconded by Ann Zackritz. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, been denied. Prejudice. Next item.
HPCA 14-00181 at 931 Northwest 19th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application of Mark and Myra Jane Reeser for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, replace sidewall in front of carport required. And there were some neighborhood comments on this application that you have in your packet.
Okay, is the applicant present? Yes, he is.
Hi, I'm Mark Reeser, 931 Northwest 19th.
Okay, great, welcome. All right, any comments? The staff has recommended denial without prejudice for this one. For, well, as it reads in here. Any comments on the recommendation?
I would agree with staff, and on the considerations of the staff report, page 3 of 3, it points out guideline 3.1.12, stating that once more than 2/3 of a component is removed, as has occurred in this case, that the whole item must come into compliance, and it does not as it has been built.
Sir, did you have any comments?
What's going on? I'm not sure what you just decided.
We haven't decided anything yet.
Oh, okay.
Comment.
Well, if you look at the older pictures of the garage, that's the same surround that's been around that garage since we moved in '93. And we've had multiple break-ins into our backyard and into my garage. We've had a lot of foot traffic, a lot of transient traffic comes through there and through the alley, and I've had so many things stolen out of there. One of the main concerns is security, not to mention the eyesore that the old one was. I wanted to make it look better. I was trying to take what was there, and I had comments from the HP committee in the past that the carport was an eyesore, and I felt it was an eyesore, the steel frame carport. So I raised the height of the surround, and for security and just for aesthetic reasons also. But yeah, security is a big issue with this garage, or carport, or whatever we call it.
And how tall is that fence?
I'm sorry?
How tall is the fence? Didn't catch that. How tall is it?
That's all of it?
How tall is it, the fence?
How tall? It's 8 foot at the corner, and it comes up to about 10 foot at the front corner that you see here on the right next to the garage. It was that high before. I just replaced it. I raised the height in the front facade. That was the same height. I just trimmed it out nice. Along the side, I raised it for security reasons. I didn't want to have to put barbed wire or anything on the top of the fence to keep people out. So we decided just to raise it just high enough to cover the steel frame carport, so you couldn't see the steel frame eyesore. So that was the reasoning behind that.
Okay, any more comments about?
And we plan on putting lamps on each side, staining it. I was waiting for it to weather before I stained it, so that's all I have.
I think it's kind of an unusual situation, but I think it is a fence, and so the fence has to fall under the fence guidelines in regards to height.
Right?
And so it would have to be the same height as the guidelines. It's really not a wall, it's really a fence.
What determines the height from
It's
the
the total
ground,
height,
the
no
bottom
matter
of the
where,
fence?
the total, in any one spot, it cannot be higher than what the guidelines allow.
Where do you measure from? I'm just curious. At the bottom of the fence, just up to the top? Mm-hmm. From the ground up to the top?
Right.
Okay.
So if you want it even, sometimes on a hilly place, then it's got to be shorter than the guidelines.
It is from the ground up, not, if it's on a wall, it has to be from the ground. So,
Right. Okay.
or curb or something.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, come on up. Sure. So if you would state your name. and well,
Janie
address.
Reeser, 931 Northwest 19th.
Okay, thank you.
My husband works nights, and if you look on those pictures, you can see if we don't bring it up, there's an area where people continually crawl through. I'm 60 years old. To have that kind of worry that constantly someone is crawling through, because we live on the corner, crawling through, coming into our backyard, I guess I don't understand aesthetically what's more pleasing, for us to have to put barbed wire or something all the way down there to keep people out, or bring our fence up a little bit to not only make it look nicer, but to give us some sort of sense of security. This isn't a one-time thing. This is a continual thing. Because of where we live, we have a constant trail of bicyclers and people walking down our street. And I'm not sure how we're supposed to, not only to make it look nice and cover up that metal carport, but to also give me some kind of sense of security at night. If we have to take that down, then we have to have something there to secure them, because they hop right over into the yard. And I'm open for a suggestion, but it's an ongoing issue for us, and it's continually getting worse.
We love where we live, and we do everything we can to make our home as nice as it can be in the neighborhood.
But I have to have a sense of security to keep people from crawling over.
Yeah, we understand your issue. We have the guidelines we have to follow. So 6 feet for side fences and 8 feet for rear fences is the maximum height.
8 feet for what fence?
Rear of the lot.
Rear lot? Oh.
Yeah.
And so this is in the location of what would have been the historic garage that shows up on the Sanborn maps, is that right?
Exactly.
So at some point, it would not be inappropriate to have an actual garage at this point, at this location on your property, that were designed within the guidelines and standards of what is required for how a garage appears from the street, what its appropriate form, shape, materials, what the appropriate door material is, those sorts of things. But in essence, we have to look at it as a carport, which it is, a carport that's been enclosed with fencing, which it is. And so, as has been stated, the guidelines say that the rear property line fence can only be 8 feet tall, the side property lines can only be 6 feet tall. So we really don't have much of a way of latitude to approve what you've brought before us today.
Okay.
So, any more comments? on
At what
this?
point did you come to the city and ask them about all of this?
We did not.
We didn't, we were just replacing
Placing
what was,
what was falling
trying to
down.
replace what was rotten down.
Because I will say this looks a lot better than it did.
We've got nothing but compliments on it. People love it, actually.
This is kind of an unfortunate situation. We've ran into it lately, is where non-complying properties are now old enough to have to be repaired, and then it presents a problem in lieu of the guidelines on how to address that, because they don't let us allow for major changes to things that were non-compliance in the beginning.
Right.
So-
Which is what this was when we
Right.
moved in, because when we moved in, it was not a historical neighborhood.
Oh, really? You've been there that long?
Huh?
Been there
Yeah,
that
it
long?
became historical in '94, a year after we moved in.
Right. So, as this structure was just falling down, not only, we were trying to just make it look nicer, but our big thing was the security. So,
Yeah. Yeah, many, thousands of dollars of stuff stolen. Tools, bicycles, lawn mowing equipment, blowers. I can't keep anything out there. I can now, but I couldn't keep anything out there after going through all this. And it's not in our budget to build a garage. This carport's really nice. It facilitates everything I do. It's nice.
Is there a need for things that are inside this structure to be this tall?
yes.
What is it, what is in
Wait,
there?
come again, ask that question?
What types of things are in this structure that facilitated the need to be this tall?
Everything I just mentioned can be lifted up over the fence, and that's how they got it out. They
I
would,
know, but if you didn't, are there things tall enough in there that you need a wall that is this tall?
tall enough?
Uh-huh.
I just need it tall enough so people can't get in or take anything out. I see what you're saying.
Is there a trailer in there, or, there's something that's as
Sometimes.
tall as this?
Sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir, there's times when there is a boat, trailer, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Just discussion amongst the commission, would there be any possibility of the walls being shorter? So it's the fence height is appropriate?
I think it kind of goes back, to that guideline that said, this entire thing was there were walls or fence, if you want to say that's what it is, built around it.
Right.
So, 6 feet is as tall as we can go on a fence, right?
6 on the side and 8 on the back. It does look like the yard slopes up some from the back to the front.
It does.
But I don't know that that's such a significant slope to warrant the fence being as high as it is.
A unique circumstance, so to speak.
It's 6, yeah. Where it comes out to the very corner on the front there, it does slope down. And we just took the line of the carport garage and just, went down.
More comments? We understand your reasoning.
And aside from the height of the fence, are there comments in particular to the garage door that's installed in the fence? The door itself doesn't meet the guidelines, but just the fact that there is a garage door in the fence, and thoughts on that?
Is the garage door new? Was there-
Okay, the garage door had 2 bent panels, so I tried to find just replacement panels. I had to buy a whole new door, the exact door that was on there since the day we moved in. So I just replaced those panels, the bent panels.
Because there's not a picture of the old, is it up? Is that what I guess it's up.
It's the
in the
same
picture.
exact door, except we just painted it red.
Oh, okay, you can see, we didn't take a picture with it down.
Yeah.
It's the same door, there was just two bent panels. I'm sorry, I didn't get a...
And so it is a totally new door, though?
No, it's the
two
same
panels
door
are-
with two panels.
Yeah, I replaced two panels.
Okay.
And painted it. I painted it, and that's what we did.
I mean, it sounds like the garage door's been there, that they just repaired the door itself and painted it. It's not a new door. Is
No,
that-
it has. It's been there since we moved in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is that,
Okay, so this is what it used to look like.
So this would not alleviate the problem if they were to make these walls shorter? To comply with the 6 feet, if that were the...
I mean, I think that it's a fence. It just needs to follow the fence guidelines. It's not a wall. It's a fence. Is that where we're trying to go? That's,
I mean, I think you could argue one way or the other about whether the garage door itself should just entirely go away, but it sounds like the garage door has been there, hasn't really been altered. It's just been the fence replaced around the door, so I can see making the argument for the garage door remaining
yeah,
where it
it's the
is,
same garage
as long
door,
as
and
the
it's just been
fence is in
repaired, I
compliance.
would say.
But just as a note, though, we would not allow a garage door in a random fence on a random corner lot, though I would think that would be our
No.
position.
No.
If they would, I mean, it would be my, I think that if you would have taken the whole garage door down and bought an identical door, that would not be allowed.
Right.
But since you used the existing door and repaired it,
Right.
if I'm getting,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
then I don't think that you can make them take that one off. Or, I mean, I think if we went to the, if we went to the part of the guidelines where it discusses once you do so much to a non-complying, or, part of the property, I think we probably could. But in this instance, I personally think that if that's been there since you've been there and you repaired it, I'm okay with that. I would move, I would move to deny HPCA 1400181 item, well, how do you have, is it 2 items? I'm sorry. What is it, Katie?
Mary Jo?
Is it a,
The door isn't
it
listed.
has the sidewall and front of carport.
Yeah, we just called the door at the front. I do want to note that the application form that was submitted says garage door replaced with duplicate.
Well, we didn't know how, when we were putting that in, we didn't know how to say we got, because they wanted information on what the panels were. So we just went and got the information on what the door would be if we replaced it, because we didn't know how to get that
Right,
information.
exactly. I just went to Home Depot and
It's just a portion of the original door that
Yes.
you replaced.
exactly.
Yes, but they wanted what it was made out of and all that kind of stuff, so.
So can that be a condition?
What would the
The
condition?
condition would be to retain the existing garage door.
Yes.
With the
It could be the
fence.
condition that,
It-
and with the condition that the fence.
Right,
How
yeah.
did the fence be
Right.
lowered and that the existing garage door remains?
I don't see how that works, because the fence goes over the top of the garage door.
Well, the fence doesn't go over well, it goes around, it doesn't go up over.
The picture, I mean, it's above the door. Picture right there, right there.
The door is not tied into the fence, right? The door is attached to the carport. The fence
Yes.
is not supporting the door.
I don't know, is it?
No, the
This is interesting.
the way they
The
applied
frame
it,
does.
we didn't
The frame
change-
of the fence
'Cause
on
we
the
didn't
side
change
supports the
anything.
railing for the
Right.
garage
Okay.
door.
Okay.
they've used fencing material to cover the distance above the door and below the roof of the carport.
Yes.
I mean, that could remain.
Yes.
It's not part of,
You could
I
do
mean,
what?
they did just replace that. This is a difficult,
You're saying that we could do what?
that little part above the door,
Yeah,
they replaced that. Could that remain?
it was existing
They
before.
replaced all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Right.
problem. They replaced all of it. They didn't repair a few boards, so then when you're looking at the guidelines, if they've replaced all of it, then you have to come into compliance, and that does not.
Whereas with the door, they repaired
Right.
part of the door, but less than what would require a complete replacement, so.
What's
Ms. Meacham,
that percentage?
may I ask a question of the applicant before you continue?
Please.
Across the street from the garage door, what is across the street from you?
It's the big parking lot for the insurance, for Mid-America Insurance.
So you have commercial structures across the street from you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. There is a clause in the guidelines that allow us to grant unique circumstances for a higher height of a fence with a maximum of 8 feet tall, based on unique circumstances, what is going on across the street from this property. Staff has not had an opportunity, unfortunately. I didn't think about it, Catherine did. But I haven't had an opportunity to look across the street to see if that's a valid issue.
It's the large parking lot. I mean, there is no structure between your garage and the office building on Classen, between Classen and Western.
Right.
So what, Angela, what was that, that,
I think Angela's saying that it's allowable as a special condition or unique circumstance to allow for an 8-foot
8
fence.
feet, okay? How tall is that, by the way? Is it 10?
At the corner, it's about 10. That's the tallest point. Yeah.
Okay.
So the guideline is 2.8.15, where residential properties are adjacent to commercial or other incompatible uses, alternative fence heights may be considered for appropriateness and with respect to other city ordinances related to fences and fence walls.
It says alternative heights, but it doesn't say 8 feet.
I think 8 feet is the overall citywide
So
Fence height.
maybe there could be an exception to the side fence being from 6 feet to 8 feet due to the unique circumstances of the commercial property across the street. But that all of the fence, the back and the side, then would have to be perhaps 8 feet. That sounds like a possibility.
8 feet, so we'll be able to see the garage again. See how
Right, I don't think that there's a way that, I mean, according to the guidelines, I don't think that it's going to be able to be above 8 feet. That this might be an exception for the side.
In the rear, property line can already be 8 feet.
It can, right.
New information, anybody?
Mr. and Mrs. Reeser, I think you see we're struggling with this. It's unfortunate that you've done the work, and then we have to evaluate it as if you have not done the work.
Right.
Would we have allowed this
Right.
work to be done based on the guidelines? And we're just not finding that we would be able to do that. I think you're hearing from everyone. So just know that we do sympathize with you, but we really have to look at the merits of the case based on the guidelines.
So when we have to put up something in between that piece so people aren't coming into our
That's the
backyard,
whole deal, yeah.
that's what we do? Just put in rolls of barbed wire all the way around our
Know
house?
that we'd be able to approve barbed wire, Katie.
Well, that's about the only thing that
Well,
can come
like I
out.
said, I hear you, I hear the problem that you're facing, but we have to look at the case based on the guidelines. So, I mean, I just don't,
So
as far as putting something between the top of the fence, if they were to lower the height 2 feet to the top of the carport, do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you would have to look at something that you could set down below the top of the height of the fence. So there might be an open space at the roof of the carport, but something blocking. I don't know enough about what the inside of that structure is like to be able to give you much advice on to how to do that. All I can say is that the height limit for fences throughout all of the HP districts is 8 feet at the rear. We have properties that are adjacent to all sorts of different streets and different commercial properties. And obviously, people have different security concerns all over the city, but we haven't allowed people to make their fences 10 feet high, put up barbed wire, put up things like that.
What if the ground level was raised so that the fence was 8 foot high?
Well, we also have guidelines that prohibit altering the topography of the site.
Is that front of that carport, former carport,
I'm sorry?
is it on the property line, right on the property line?
The side of it
Well, the entry side, yeah.
is far, yeah.
Right on the
We just followed the same line as the old one, the same post line.
But the structure sits right on the property line, it doesn't sit back or something at all.
I'm not real sure, I couldn't tell you that for
Your
sure.
site plan shows it right on the property line, I just was curious. And on the other side of the carport, is it open or is it also closed?
The back of the carport,
Yeah, the
you go down the side and to the rear of the carport.
east and the south.
Yeah, the east is enclosed.
East is enclosed.
South side is the house side, the backyard, the inside of it.
Okay, so the new fence intersects the house?
The new fence what?
The new fence intersects the house. It becomes attached to the house?
No.
No.
Just kind of, I can't quite figure it out.
Okay, you go through the garage door, and you go into the garage, and about 3/4 of the way in the garage, there's a gate that opens up into my backyard.
A gate, okay.
There's a gate that opens up from the garage into my backyard.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And the fence from the southeast corner runs to the edge of the jamb of that gate, and on the other side of the gate, it just goes to the corner of the little outbuilding. That little outbuilding is the south side of the carport. The outbuilding that is built right next to is the south wall of the carport.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay. Complicated.
I think Mary Jo started to make a motion earlier.
I'm trying. I think that we just have to go with the guidelines as far as the fence. I'm not really sure what to do about the area above the garage door.
I think that's something that, I'm happy to talk with you a little more about that, and if we can figure out something that's not visible, that you can do on the interior, but I think that's something that would probably have to come back for
Well,
further.
our garage door is hooked onto that.
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking about the space between the fence and the top of the carport.
Oh, okay.
You're saying the garage door?
Well, it's also, there's a fence, because it's not a wall, on both sides of the garage door. It goes all the way up to the 10 feet is what we're saying, and then there's about a 2 feet space that spans above the garage door. Is that part of the fence and does it need to come down? Right now, it's attached to the fence. I mean, we can...
It's attached to the carport, yeah.
It's
Okay,
part of
but-
the fence, but it's attached to the
Right.
structure of the carport. Right. That's what I was trying to find out, if it was, the structure was right there, or was it set back a little bit?
I mean, there was something that looked like that before this, but I'm going to have to...
We're really struggling with this one, aren't we?
I'm not really... So can we approve with the condition that it comes down?
We could approve with the condition that the height of the fence be reduced to 8 feet if you wanted to do the unique circumstance for the commercial
Right.
property across the street.
Is that
I
what
kind of
would be-
worry about that unique circumstance. Just because there's a commercial property across the street doesn't mean we always would grant that unique circumstance. So what about that parking lot? It seems to me they're not so much concerned about the parking lot across the street as people coming over the fence. So what does that parking lot have to... I'm not seeing a unique circumstance, and I worry about that.
Well, I we discussed the other day, we're really, every case is different, so we wouldn't be setting a precedent necessarily.
Right.
So-
So
I think just the overall effect of being on the edge of a residential area where it transitions to a different character, transitions to commercial, that you have a different kind of traffic passing by your property than you would, when you're that much closer to Classen and that sort of thing, than you would if you were in the midst of a completely residential area.
Right, I don't feel like I don't feel like it's an exception because it is in the guidelines that we can make an exception.
I agree, and I think that just because there is a property or a series of properties that are commercial located there, doesn't mean that the traffic or those properties are incompatible with the use of this structure. I also don't believe that staff fully understands how the door is connected to all of this, and we have not presented this well for you. It may be more in both the applicant's favor and the commission's favor for staff to make a point to meet with the applicant at the house, take a look at the site, and more fully explain this for you.
Unfortunately, I don't feel like that is necessary because if it is attached to that
Structure.
part of the structure, I think that at least I am interested in making a motion that would just give you the 8 feet. It would have to look like a fence. It could not be connected to the part that goes over the garage door, and it would be like a fence, 8 feet on the west and 8 feet on the north.
8 feet on the west around the door?
It has to be a fence. We don't really have another guideline that applies to this.
I just put what was there. I just rebuilt what was there.
Right. Unfortunately, the guidelines do address removing material or portions of a property that are not historic. Once they're removed and you're putting them back, then it comes under the total guideline. I mean, if you would have left what was there and replaced a few boards, that's one thing. But since you took it all down
It looked like
and started
crap.
over,
It looks beautiful now.
It was falling apart.
It's fallen down, and now we have a beautiful
and
garage.
we understand that, but the commissioners have to follow the guidelines.
And we'll have to do what we have to do.
Okay.
Okay?
I would move to, let's see. I would move to approve HPCA 14-00181, item 1, with unique circumstances, with the specific findings that the proposed work will not have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district, and the following unique circumstances exist, that the items do not strictly comply with all relevant guidelines, are not addressed by them, but are nonetheless consistent with the spirit and intent of said guidelines, and are in compliance with the relevant sections of the Code 2010. Unique circumstances for the fence on the west side would be the location of the property across the street from commercial, and that fence could be 8 feet tall. That would be the exception. And that the fence on the back be reduced to 8 feet as listed in the guidelines.
So I have a question about that. Are we assuming they're just going to take a saw and cut off those extra feet? I mean, they're going to have to present something to staff to show,
Well,
right?
I had
it has to look like a fence. I mean, it can't be tied and then go over a door. It has to be a fence.
Let's throw something out here. Could they, a fence coming up to the carport and then enclose the carport as a garage, and then the garage guidelines would apply? It'd be a new design, but it would allow them to enclose it. I'm not saying that what they've got is what you'd want.
I think if they came,
It's the only way I can think of to enclose it higher than 8 feet.
I'll go back to some other statements that were made, is that if you came before us and you hadn't done the work and you wanted to enclose the carport, we would not allow it. We would tell you you need to go back and probably present a design for a garage.
Yeah, right.
So
They could-
I would say no, I would not. I don't think enclosing the carport would be a possibility.
What? Why not?
I don't think enclosing the carport, any part of the carport, is a possibility. I don't think if you came to the meeting originally and tried to ask to enclose part of the carport, that the guidelines would not allow for that.
They could turn it into a garage, you said.
If you built a garage with a garage roof that looked like a garage.
You could reuse the structure and possibly...
You could use some of it, but it would still have to look like the garages that we approve according to the guidelines.
Right, that's my point. So that's a possibility if they still want to enclose it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right.
You'd have to come up with a design to make it follow the garage guidelines.
Come up with the design for what we have there to follow garage guidelines? Is that what you're saying?
It would have to have like a gable or a hip roof or whatever is, in your neighborhood, or if you had historic information about the original garage, but not a flat roof, a sloped roof like this. I don't think it would.
What if I leave it there? What if I leave the garage there with a ugly fence? What if I put all the old fence back up? What does that look like for us, for the city, for my neighborhood and my house that I feel so strongly about? I was there before it was a historical neighborhood, okay? I was there before it was a historical neighborhood. All of that was there before it was a historical neighborhood. I wanted to do something nice, and now I've got to cut it down to 8 feet and put a gabled roof on it? A gabled roof won't even go next to that little house. That's a beautiful structure.
I understand how it can be
Unbelievable.
upsetting, but did you, I guess the other is, we would just want people to be sure that they understand for fences and building that you have to, use the guidelines and come to the commission or come to the staff and ask for ideas before you start a project.
Well, I just replaced what was there
But
and made it secure, because we've had thousands of dollars worth of property stolen, people up in my property, transients looking over my fence
Right.
that was 8 foot. I go out in my backyard and I see a head over my fence looking in my garage. I got to chase this guy down the alley. This happens all the time. We're on the Trail of Beers. It's from the Jesus House to the Plasma Center to all the pawn shops. Okay? All the pawn shops, they have it set up really, really nice for people to go from Jesus House, get their money for selling their plasma, go to the pawn shops for shit they stole, for things they stole, go and buy their paint to Huff at O'Reilly, walk back down my sidewalk, go back to Homeland, buy money, but coming through my neighborhood, they're stealing things. This has gone on since '93. We've had 3 cars stolen on that corner. It's a huge security issue. We have a commercial property. I've put up with this parking lot across from my house for years, and all that entails, people parking along my street, using my yard, my alley as a smoking area. I need privacy, I need security. This gave it to us. We're very, very, very happy. And this guideline is an extenuating circumstance beyond any other house in that area right there. My house is an extenuating circumstance. It's been a difficult place to live. That's the best I could do. Okay? I don't know what else to tell you. We've got nothing but compliments on it. It's going to look even nicer when I finish it. And I just don't understand. I really don't. We've complied. We've done very nice things with our property. I took our porch. Our porch was this old wooden, rebuilt piece of crap that somebody had built, and we tore it down to rebuild the porch. You know what I found? I found where bricks had been set down in the ground. There were columns around my porch, beautiful columns. I rebuilt those columns. I rebuilt my entire front porch beautifully. I've replaced all my windows with true divided light, low E, $50,000 worth of windows or more. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on this home to make it look nice. It's one of the nicest homes in Mesta Park. One of the nicest homes in Mesta Park. And this is part of that niceness. And it's going to get nicer. Okay?
we understand that, but we are bound.
I know you are.
We're bound by the guidelines, really. I think everybody up here has sympathy for your situation, but we're bound by the guidelines.
I understand.
You had a carport that was more or less grandfathered in, being there before '94.
Exactly.
Now that you've altered it without permission, now it's coming to us as if it was never there. That puts us in the state that
You guys don't
Commissioner
consider
Meacham
what was
talked
there
about.
before? That's not even a consideration, what was there before and how it looked? That's not a consideration at all? That's odd. You guys want to look, that's why we give you pictures. That's why I took pictures of it before.
The commission does consider what was there before. We have guidelines about existing non-historic fabric and the amount of repair that can be made to existing non-historic fabric. And then when you cross a certain threshold, it's no longer considered repair, and that fabric or those building elements have to be brought into compliance. So, as was kind of mentioned earlier, if you make a few minor repairs here and there to something that's already existing, but doesn't meet the guidelines, that's fine. But once you start completely replacing the entire fence, when you rebuild an entire structure, then it has to follow the guidelines.
I saved for years to do that. I saved for years to do that because I wanted to do it for many, many years. I understand your guidelines, but you have to understand where I'm coming from.
We understand.
It's security, it's safety,
We do
and
understand.
there's circumstances involved here.
We do understand, and it probably does look better than it did before. We're just having to follow the rules, basically, and we need to have reason to give exceptions. So we have one, the commercial area. The others,
There's nobody else looking at me. A parking lot.
Sir?
certainly understand.
Right.
I know.
We all
It's-
understand.
It's guidelines, I know. It's very emotional for us, though.
We understand.
We understand that too, and I sympathize with your situation.
Let's go ahead and make the motion that you're,
There's a motion before you.
Okay.
you did make it?
Did I finish?
Could you,
You almost
I think
finished?
so. I think it was,
Finished,
I think we needed
except that the height of the
the
fence needs to be
the conditions were that the fence on the north be reduced to 8 feet, that the special circumstances apply to the fence on the west so that it can be 8 feet instead of 6, and that the existing garage door can remain
as repair.
as it has been repaired.
So the part above the garage door all has to come out, is what you're saying? All that, the facade has to come out above the garage door that's
Can't be.
built. That was there before.
Can't be taller than 8 feet.
Okay.
That was there before.
So what you're going to see is a metal carport now.
We're going to be back to where we started, and then it's going to cost us that much more to cut it all down.
That's-
And then we're going to be back to no security, and we're back to where we are with the new 6-foot fence that really cost me way more than a 6-foot fence.
If we pass this, you can always take it to the Board of Adjustments.
Well, we will. We'll have to.
Is there a second for the motion?
Well, I have a question on that. If we pass that, if they're not wanting to change it, then why don't we deny it and let it go to the Board of Adjustment? I'm not comfortable passing something. Typically, we pass something when the applicant says, yes, I agree
Agree to change it.
with those changes. They're saying, no, we're not agreeing with Mary Jo's changes, so why would we approve something they're not requesting?
That's right. We typically don't approve things with conditions that the applicant has no interest in agreeing to those conditions, so we can deny it.
Is that true, Mary?
And
Yes, we don't agree with your
So-
suggestions at all.
we can deny it without prejudice, and you could meet with staff, and we can see if we can come up with a solution that you're happy with, and come back and apply again and try and get that approved here, or you can appeal it to the Board of Adjustment, and we can talk about that in greater
Does Joe have to
detail.
withdraw her motion?
Yes.
Yes, she should withdraw her
I
motion.
will withdraw my motion.
Okay, and now a new motion, right?
Yes.
It can be from you, I guess.
Okay, so I move to deny HPCA.
Sure.
A speaker.
Catherine Montgomery, just sitting back there in the audience, listening. The guidelines and the standards are there to formulate the basis for decision-making relative to historic preservation. There is an opportunity by the ordinance to allow unique circumstances. The commission or staff or the applicants get to decide what are the unique circumstances that we have here. So I don't know anything about this case. I don't know how many times you've come before. But if there's an opportunity for a continuance, I would suggest that you have a continuance and then you work through some of those issues. I mean, it just, no continuances left? Okay. Well, you can always apply again. It only costs $100. It just seems to me that if there are unique circumstances, that we need to work hard to establish and discover what those unique circumstances are.
Absolutely.
I agree, but I think that it's always easier to work out the unique circumstances prior to the work being done. It's very difficult to have alternative solutions to the problem when the work is already done. I think, and that's kind of the situation here. I'm not saying that we could have found or tried to guide,
I think we were looking for some unique circumstances.
Right, I agree.
So here we are. So let's go ahead.
Okay. I move to deny HPCA item 1, Katie, with or without prejudice, with the specific findings that the proposed work will have an adverse effect on the historic character of the district or property, is not consistent with the provisions of the guidelines, and is not in compliance with the relevant sections of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2010, as referenced in the specific findings in Section D of the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Joe Meacham and second by Jeffrey Parks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, been denied. Sorry. You can do what Katie suggested and try to work out something for another.
So we need to get a hold of you, Katie, later on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Next.
HPCA 14-00237 at 828 Northwest 39th Street, Crown Heights, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Kristen and Jason Thorpe by Brian Scroggins of Outdoor Escapes LLC for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install pool elective, and 3, construct accessory structure with fireplace and kitchen appliances elective.
Okay. Is the applicant present? They are? Okay.
Chairman, I'm going to abstain from this. I'm going to abstain from this
Okay.
vote.
Do you want to
All
take
right.
the items separately?
What's
The
that?
staff has recommended approval on item 1 to install pool and paving, and I would move that unless there's further discussion.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's moved by Anita Crank Clemens, second by Ann Zakritz. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, your pool has been approved, item 1. Now to the next one, the staff has recommended continuance for more information. Would you like to step forward? I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Good afternoon. I'm Brian Scroggins with Outdoor Escapes, the owner. Address 5000 Southeast 150th Court, where I live, Oklahoma City.
You're the applicant.
I'm the contractor.
And you're the owner,
She's the
okay.
home. I'm the applicant.
It's okay. Just somebody can answer questions. I'm sure there'll be some in a second. You may need to help. Any questions on that?
Kristen Thorpe, 828 Northwest 39th.
Okay, thank you. Need to sign in also. I think the main concern was the height of the outdoor fireplace structure.
It looks like that, and then also that there aren't materials provided, a material list.
This is a unique structure. I kind of think we kind of fall in a couple of different categories in your guidelines. I think we're approaching this as a landscape structure, being a pergola or a gazebo type structure, and then we kind of at the last minute got thrown into an accessory structure. So there was not an opportunity to get all the documentation that we were required at the very last because of this kind of in the middle of the zone there on the different guidelines, so.
So I think we would need that documentation in order to make it, I
that's
mean,
not
at
a
least I
problem.
would. And then also, it's recommended that the roof be changed to a flat roof. Have you considered that?
We kind of disagree with that statement, just because the flat roof with this Tudor revival architecture in that area, there's a flat roof is just not conducive to that architecture in that neighborhood. Everything is steep roofed, pitched roofs. I mean, we don't see any type of flat structures, in that neighborhood, so.
I think staff's concern is that the structure, an accessory structure is typically simpler than the primary structure, and this design makes it seem more profound than.
Kind of disagree with that. I mean, we had a steeper roof on the plan itself, and they came to us and wanted us to lower that. We lowered that. I mean, there's opportunity we can lower that a little bit more, but I mean, we're talking about a roof that's barely going to be 4 foot tall. I mean, the height of the roof part's only going to be 4 foot versus, a flat roof system that's, a foot or 2 foot. I mean, we're talking 2 feet here of difference of the roof height from a flat roof structure to a pitched roof structure. We went down to a 712 pitch on that roof. I mean, we could go down as low as maybe a 412 just to get some pitch to it, but I just don't see where a flat roof structure fits in there. I mean, it's fairly simple design. It's not anything elaborate. It's just a covered roof structure with 4 posts on it and open. I mean, it's open, so.
I have a concern about drainage with a flat roof.
You need to step up
Oh, I'm
so you can be
sorry.
recorded.
Excuse me.
This is all being recorded.
Sorry, I have a concern about drainage with a flat roof, and I also have a concern that there aren't any other structures in the immediate area that have a flat roof. And, the idea is to provide a pleasing, continuity with the surrounding structures, and a flat roof, in my mind, doesn't accomplish that.
Would staff care to comment on that? They've based their opinion on the guidelines, and they're disagreeing with you, so I'd like to hear if they have anything further to say.
We felt like when we see accessory structures in backyards historically that have a more open and supposedly kind of temporary nature to them, outdoor kind of nature to them, we see a lot of things like pergolas and trellises that have a flat roof. To build a structure that has a steeply pitched roof, like the house or like the garage, seems to make it feel that much more permanent. And we felt like lowering the pitch, so now you've got 1 pitch on the house, 1 pitch on the garage, another pitch on a new structure, seemed more disjointed than just having a straight flat roof. And as well as the fact that having a flat roof would be that much less visible from other properties. So that was where those concerns came from.
What do you think, Mr. Architect?
I don't disagree with staff. The overall size of the structure is 14 by 21. Is that 14 by 21.6 or 24 feet, I guess, is the roof? Okay.
Yes, 14 by 24.
Okay, great.
I guess I have a question regarding visibility of the roof from the roadway. If you'll look at the picture that's taken from the front of the house, it's very difficult to see what would be immediately behind the home, so I'm not sure how a flat roof contributes to that.
And our primary focus often is what's visible from the street, but the guidelines do take into account what can be seen from neighboring properties and how that affects the overall experience of the space in the district, not just from the public right-of-way, but from adjacent yards. So I think at some point you kind of reach a critical mass of the massing of buildings, the number of structures on a site, the amount of roof material that's visible on a site. And so that's what we were trying to address. Those guidelines are not, we have some guidelines that are very mathematical, and we have a very specific number to go by. This is one that is not as mathematical, but we felt like it was a pretty large structure and a pretty large roof, even though it is behind the house.
Okay, so the recommendation is to continue it, allow you to sort of work through
I guess I would just ask if it would be acceptable to just decrease the slope of the roof without making it totally flat. Would that be more acceptable to the commission?
Well, first of all, a flat roof is never really flat. It has a slight slope, so...
Now, are you talking about a flat roof structure, or are you talking about a pergola structure? I mean, a flat roof is still something that it's going to shed water completely off.
Right.
Are you talking about a pergola structure that allows water to come through?
I think it's...
I think a roof, a true roof, a flat roof, just that it would not have a pitch to it.
I think it's the
It's
profile.
got to have a pitch to it if it's a roof.
Well, not a visibly noticeable.
It'll be very low slope. So, it could be done.
Water can drain off. My main concern, honestly, is drainage. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
I
it
just
can do
don't
that.
want,
Sure, no, flat roofs they're not really flat, are done all the time, particularly on commercial structures, and it usually has like a 1/4 inch per foot slope. It appears flat enough. The size of the structure is such that once you do put a substantial pitch on the roof, it's a big structure. Even though it is behind the house, generally invisible from the street, it's still a big thing in your backyard, almost the size of actually a whole other garage in your backyard, really. So I think that by lowering the pitch to a flat roof, or almost flat roof, as we've talked about, certainly makes it more, the mass is much less, and therefore at least much more achievable in my mind, or appropriate.
But you think the flat roof, you talked about not having, you have a highly steep roof on a house, a different pitch on a garage, and then a flat roof. To me, and then you're talking, to me, it's not this, it doesn't even relate to the houses itself. And then you're talking, exactly what you just said is a flat roof is, you're looking more of a commercial or modern look than what, it didn't tie into the historical.
No, we're helping it to feel more like an accessory structure, I think is our goal.
Right. I just want to make it look, like it fits in, so.
So then it sounds like a continuance would be in order, perhaps to give you time to talk with staff about what that roof would look like. Katie, what do you think?
Sure, that's what we had recommended. The one other
Yeah.
concern, and Angela, let me know if there's something else that I'm forgetting about on this one. I think one other concern point we had raised was the materials, the stone and the columns being rather grand, and then a lot of times we see accessory structures that are a little more modest, and so just some feedback from the commission might be helpful on whether or not that's an issue that needs to be amended.
I think the columns themselves, they're not entirely stone, top to bottom, as was kind of lodged in my head initially in writing that staff report. There is wood at the top. The portion of the columns that is stone is less than 6 feet tall, will not be visible, even from the adjacent properties. So I think if the commission is comfortable with that, staff is as well. It is an accessory structure rather than a landscape structure, and so I do want to make sure that if the commission believes it is necessary, we fully document all exterior visible materials, countertops, what have you.
So I don't think that the stone bothers me as long as it's not at all visible, less than 6 feet. Does anyone else have any?
Right, and it's
opinions?
not, like you say, all of
Right.
the column or whatever, yeah.
So as to the applicant, I would recommend a continuance in order for you to have time to work with staff on that and to get the material documentation, if that's okay with you. Katie, as far as continuing it to February 4th, when would she have to have everything together?
Continuances to the February 4th meeting would need to be in by Tuesday of next week.
we can do that.
Okay. Then I move to continue HPCA 14-00237, item 3, construction of an accessory structure to the February 4th meeting. And that is, item 3.
Second.
So just so I understand, the CA for the pool would be forthcoming after the period? Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's been moved by Neil Craig Clemens, second by George Massey. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, item 3 is continued. Thank you. And now,
HPCA 14-00239 at 316 Northwest 21st Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Mark and Ashley Folk by Catherine Montgomery, a Preservation and Design Studio, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage, elective, and 3, construct garage with bonus room, elective.
okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I am.
State your name. and-
Ashley, A-S-H-L-E-Y, Folk, F as in Frank, U-L-K,
At,
316 Northwest 21st Street.
okay, and you need to sign in too, so. Okay. The staff has recommended continuing items 1 and 3 for additional information. Any comments on that? Or the case?
My question is the, what is it called? The bonus room considered part of the footprint of the garage?
That's how we interpreted it. I mean, it's all one structure, it's all attached. So when we've seen garages with additional living space added on before, whether that was a game room or an apartment or whatever, we have treated that like it was all one building and included that in the evaluation of the square footage.
Is there unique circumstances?
When it comes to the size of the actual garage itself, I drive a sedan. I have no interest in going out and purchasing a large vehicle. Unfortunately, my husband does have a need for a vehicle that is off-road. He is in sales. He goes to oil sites all the time. Sedan is not going to get him to where he needs to go. He's also required to have a vehicle that can house 5 adults, 5 seat belts. So the vehicle he's always going to have to, knock on wood, he doesn't lose his job, drive is going to need to be a very large vehicle, an SUV or a pickup truck, which is what he currently drives. So taking that into account when we were rendering drawings, unfortunately that just did not factor into, I guess, the size limitations that are currently in the guidelines. Again, when we were looking at the drawings, we're not asking for a whole lot of extra space in the garage itself, the building that's going to house the 2 vehicles. Just purely enough to put 2 cars in and shut the garage doors. No workbench, nothing along those lines.
I don't think the garage is the issue, it's the added
The bonus room, is that what you're referencing?
bonus room. It looks like an apartment, actually.
Well, we do have family. We're not from Oklahoma. Both of our parents are getting up there in age, so we were wanting to build a place for them to come stay that didn't require them to go upstairs, which is, our home is 2 stories with all the bedrooms upstairs. So, yes, we did add a small bathroom off to the side of that.
So if you consider the whole structure, it puts it over the
It does.
450 rule, is that right?
And we've discussed, if that's the issue, we can always, we just added it to the side of the building housing the cars, just out of convenience, quite frankly. We can always split the 2 apart if that helps with some of the size issues.
You can always do what?
Pull them apart.
Pull it apart?
Yes.
Katie, if they did that, would that follow the guidelines of our accessory buildings?
We don't, similar to the one that we were just discussing, the accessory structures guidelines don't have as specific as a square footage requirement as we do for garages. They talk about the appearance and location should be based on the appearance of a historic accessory building if such existed. If such documentation is not available, the size, design, and location should be in keeping with other accessory buildings in the block and district. Design should be secondary to that of the main historic building. Talks about height, which we're clearly over that limit. That's, under 6 feet. for things like sheds, materials. New accessory buildings shall follow the historic side and backyard setback patterns of other accessory buildings. So the main guideline addressing size of that would just be that the size should be in keeping with other accessory buildings in the block and historic district and with any historic precedent at the site.
Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio. When we drew this up for them, we did not consider that the bonus room was actually part of the garage. We really felt that the definition of a garage was, a parking place for vehicles, and we put the two together. We did consult with staff. We took staff's recommendations, which were to take the addition and not pull it out the same size as the garage. That's why the garage is the height that it is, so that we could get an 8-foot height in the bonus room. And it sheds up so that it's a lesser structure. It's set back from the front of the garage. As Ashley indicated, we could separate those two structures. However, if we do that, then we're going to have a side setback. Like, let's say we put them at the two extremes of the property lines, then we're going to have a side setback. So actually, the amount of the backyard that remains after doing that is going to feel effectively less than what you have right now with them being next to each other. The bonus room is really a very modest structure. It's not going to be visible from the street at all. And we do have additional photographs that, we could share with you if you're interested.
Well, Catherine, my concern, because of what you had to do to get the height in the, quote, bonus room, the 8 feet, it really raised the proportion of the garage, which looks a little bit...
It just made it 2 feet taller than it is now.
Yeah, but you look at the garages around it, they're not, it's going to be...
Actually, the garage that's just to the west is a lot taller than their current garage. And it was recently, I think that was like a 2000...
I think it was 2007.
I was going to say 7 or 8 project. It's a brand-new garage.
Brand-new garage.
And we also looked to that because at the same time they did that, they did an addition to the back of their house. And so effectively the same amount of lot coverage for the two structures, but what we're proposing is something that's detached, so it doesn't even interfere, it doesn't even connect to the historic structure, so it doesn't disturb the historic structure on the back at all.
You just don't find them in garages with 11-foot clearance inside of it.
It's not the preference.
Seems tall.
We could have designed it differently, but because we were, going with staff's recommendation to set it back and make it a shed roof, that's kind of what we came up with.
Makes sense, but still the proportion seems tall.
Yeah, I agree. This commissioner doesn't have such a big issue with the footprint of the bonus room, and I think integrating them into a single structure makes more sense than having two separate structures in my mind. That extra kind of eave height between the top of the door and the bottom of the eave that you do see from the street seems a little unusual, I guess.
In the last couple of months, we've denied 2 garages that came in. One wanted an additional, I think, 4 to 6 feet on the back of it, and they were going to put a porch, and that was going to be in their backyard. We denied that. That was in Shepherd. Then somebody came in last month, I think it was in Mesta Park. Their garage backed up to an alley. Their garage could have been an additional 3 feet deeper if we would have let them build on the area between the alley and the original location of the garage, and we denied that. So I feel like that we're on garages, it seems like that we have been in the mode of trying to stick to the guideline that is in the...
Well, I think then it's appropriate to pass around these photographs because, as Ms. Volk stated, her car is just a normal car.
Right.
And
I understand that, and I think for unique circumstances that the case for exceptions would be better made to look at garages and buildings that are in the neighborhood with a comparison, because it seems like I read in the staff report that this was a very small garage for the area, and I think I'm not saying it's possible, I just think it's easier to make exceptions if you say every garage in the neighborhood is bigger, or every garage in the neighborhood is already on the average 600 square feet, because those are part of the neighborhood. But to make exceptions based on people's cars, I think that puts us in a position where there's just really nothing in the guidelines that we can make exceptions for lifestyle.
Well, we can certainly undertake that kind of study. I mean, we've done that before for other projects that are in Mesta Park, and so we do know that the average size of a garage is bigger than what is currently at this property, and that a two-car garage would not be outside of the realm of possibility. I know that this case is probably one of the first ones that you're hearing since the new guidelines went into effect, establishing 450 square feet as the maximum size for a replacement garage, which I would submit to you is rather restrictive. That's a two-car garage measuring 22.5 feet by 20 feet. As you can see by the photographs that I'm circulating, Ms. Folt's car is a normal sedan, and she can barely get it in there, and then she hardly has room to even open the doors and get out. So it's an extremely small garage, and as you can see by the documents that we've provided, because we showed the size of the vehicles in the garage, so we're not padding it at all, for just as she had said. We also, we looked at doing a two-car, a double-wide garage door versus two singles, and frankly, two singles, which is more in keeping with the neighborhood, gives us a better result because we get that extra distance between the two garage doors so that there's actually room for the cars to, for the doors to open once you get inside, and you don't have to jiggle around just to get inside. So
I agree with you. I think that the square footage that ended up in the changed guidelines is appearing to be very restrictive, but we haven't been making exceptions.
Well, I would agree they're unreasonable. And the one that we had last month, the fellow was kind enough to revise his application to something that fell within the guidelines. We didn't actually deny it. I struggle with how to actually get around it at this point, but I feel that the guideline is in fact unreasonable in its requirement.
However, it's a guideline.
First, as far as that 450, I mean, the reason the guy revised his application is because we told him we were going to deny it because I'd started the conversation. And the way this is written, I don't see how you can go above 450, I mean, without unique circumstances, but like you said, I don't think it would be car size. But the other question I have I missed something, or I don't see that we've discussed the first issue here about the feasibility of the existing garage. Do you have comments?
that was actually the reason why we provided 11 more pages of photographs, was to show the condition of the garage. You'll see that on the southeast corner, there used to be a substantial tree. The tree has been cut down, but the trunk is still there, so there's a reference point for it. Anyway, that tree was leaning on the garage, and in some of those photographs, I didn't keep a copy, so I don't know what page to refer you to, but you can see how the garage has racked significantly. You can also see that on the inside of the garage, how the structure is really cobbled together, and some of the 1x4s that are holding this thing up have actually broken. There's a lot of daylight. The garage itself has a corrugated metal roof, which is not original. The last pages show you that there's a window. There's a window that's been cut in, and I'm going to tell them anyway that, one time when Ashley got locked out of the garage, she just pulled the window out and hopped right on through. So it's obviously not an original window, and you can see on page 10 how it's been cut in with those raw edges. The tree trunk you can see on page 9. You can also see on the far right of page 9 that board that is standing quote-unquote straight. The separation between the garage and that board is the result of the racking. You can see the deterioration on the left-hand side. I know the staff report said that the inside of the boards looked good, but but it's the same board. So if it's rotting on the outside, it's only a matter of time before it's going to rot on the inside. The concrete slab itself, you can see on page page 2 is, it's all cracked up, it's been patched before. The garage has, it's not like somebody who's just ignored it and let it fall down. There's actually been some attempt to keep this thing standing for some period of time, and I just think that it's reached that place where to repair it, you would be taking it down and rebuilding it. And I just don't think that that is reasonably feasible financially, or, it just doesn't make financial sense to rebuild it exactly the way it is, and it doesn't make technical sense to try and repair the materials that are already there. Now, I also know that, we used to come in here with structural engineers' reports, and that those were basically no longer required. So I advised my client that they didn't need to undertake a structural engineer's report. If that is something that we do need to get, then of course we can get that. But I was hoping that my reputation in historic preservation would be good enough.
He's a new commissioner. He doesn't know you.
I know. Well, that's good.
Add some comments. The garage door that's on there had an automatic opener on it, and it actually has broken. We've been told that there'd be no point in replacing it. The tension from the lean on the building itself will not allow the opener to work. I've several times actually had to put a shoulder into the garage door to get the thing open. So it's definitely not functioning well anymore. And when we had the garage door gentleman out there, he said there was really nothing he could do aside from start over when it came to the building itself, twerking it or pulling it or whatever technical terms you want to use.
Because the building itself is twisting.
Correct.
It does not allow the door to raise and lower.
Yeah. So.
Okay, all over the place.
On demolition, I would say that I think things like this can be repaired, but I do believe that it comes more under the, is it feasible to use it? And I think that we have been giving permission for slightly dilapidated versus extremely dilapidated garages to be removed and replaced by two-car garages. I still hold that. Whether the square footage that's in the guidelines is the best number right now, it's the number we have.
Is what it is.
And the accessory building, I don't really see how it falls. If it would have been there or something like that, and maybe it was a redesign of that, but I'm not really sure how I see adding an apartment in the backyard. I don't really see where that falls in the total guidelines.
For us, additions are permitted.
Right.
So, we could put on a rear addition and we wouldn't be having this discussion. But really, in my opinion, at least having a separate structure, you don't even touch the original structure. So from the perspective of reversibility and interference with the historic, that a completely separate structure is actually better than doing an addition, which would cover up a facade, cut new openings, whatever, run the gamut.
Yeah.
And as far as the size of the garage, I'd be happy to do a study and bring you some stats, that would justify the size of the garage, if that's what you prefer to have.
How justify based on?
Based on the average size of the garages in a 5-block radius. I don't know, whatever.
Right. I just suggested that, I think that it's, for me, I would rather look at a unique circumstance based on architecture than lifestyle. We just can't really, it's very difficult to make an exception on that. Whereas if we knew that every garage there was a certain size or something, maybe, because we've really struggled with trying to give what I think everybody thought were really reasonable requests, and we have continued to deny on this garage issue.
Well, could we alter the garage itself to fit the 450? A little smaller than what you've got.
It's the minimum size it can be. If we make a garage that has
Because of the vehicle size? Okay, I missed that part.
Yeah, and
Your husband's
It
vehicle.
wasn't too long ago that I was not on this side of
Yeah.
the horseshoe, and, I mean, I remember garage cases coming through and people kind of feeling like, well, you know, it's just because they have monster trucks or something like that. And I don't think we ever considered the fact that, you know, it's not a choice. It's something that they have to have. So, you know, and it's not like, and as we said, as, you know, Ms. Fultz said, they're not asking for storage space or anything. They just want to be able to put the cars in and be able to get out of the car. So as far as adjusting the size of it, yeah, I mean, I guess we could, you know, make a car side and a truck side and carve some square footage out and make it an irregular structure instead of a rectangle.
I missed the part about the larger vehicle. So you would have some storage on the smaller side, smaller vehicle side.
I will just note that, you know, we've talked several meetings in a row about the 450 limit on the garages, and that we do have language in that guideline that establishes the square footage, that additional factors, including the level of visibility of a new garage and size and massing of surrounding structures, may be considered. I do think that this is one that you can look at the pictures that we took from the street and see that you cannot see the carport from the street. You really only see the one-car portion of the historic garage. So I think this is one where we can see that something going out to the side into the backyard would be less visible than some that we've had that were at a corner lot.
Our other two cases were on corner lots, if I
Yeah,
am.
they were corners.
Right.
Corners and a corner and an alley.
But it was also a corner
the
lot.
corner of the alley. Whether that warrants a garage that is nearly double the 450 square feet, I don't know, but I think that's something to take into consideration at looking at a garage that's at least somewhat larger than the 450.
It's only double if you consider the bonus structure part of the garage, which I do not. I mean, it's not.
That's what I was thinking about saying, was that what if we consider the garage as garage and the bonus room as accessory structure and apply the rules to each one? Because the bonus room isn't used for anything related to the garage.
I just don't think that we have done that in the past. I think when we've looked at garages with
As a structure.
with a storage room attached or
Whatever.
a game room attached or some other room attached, that if it's all one structure, it's one structure. I totally understand your point, and the way that it's designed is exactly what we told people to do with garages that wanted extra space on, with it set back to the side. It's the square footage that presents a challenge.
And the client is happy to separate them. It's just that then there's going to be a 5-foot strip of backyard in between the two of them.
Seems like we need to clean up garage versus accessory structure and combine them into some guideline to cover an accessory structure, no matter what it is. But here we are.
Well, and this commission has seen cases where things have been proposed in backyards that take up almost the entire backyard. And that's something we certainly do not want to see in our historic districts.
This one won't do that.
Knowing how to quantify that is difficult. Yeah. This one doesn't appear to do that.
It's overall about 4 feet deeper, and then the addition to the side. I was looking at the aerial photograph, and the house to the left on that aerial has quite a bit more coverage. So, but to tell you the truth, I'm more concerned about the height than the massing than the coverage. Looks to me out of proportion.
And that is the part, again, that you do see from the street.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't make a motion.
I mean, it's literally 2 feet difference.
I know, but just
which
looks
is from
odd. Just to me, this looks odd. Maybe if the doors were 8 feet tall, but you wouldn't want to do that. So, it's proportion of the doors and the height and the fascia above the doors.
I mean, if you think it's a design issue with the front of the garage, like the way it's been articulated, there could be some changes to that might...
Well, it's just the height, it's 11-foot clear garage, just don't see those.
I agree. I don't like the height, it seems to be too high when we're talking about compatible, and then I don't really see how the slope of the roof for the accessory building fits into similarities as far as roof design.
The lean-to?
Right.
I mean, the garage itself has a lean-to on it to the south. You just can't see it, it's in the back.
The existing one?
You know, for garages with servants' quarters, as they were called in the day, the roof line was consistent for the entire structure.
Sometimes, not always, but yeah.
But many times, right? Would this be a little more palatable if it was one continuous roof line rather than having the separate roof line, if we're thinking about an accessory structure?
I think a hip or gable, a hip roof or a gable roof on the addition would allow the garage portion to be lower and would be a more cohesive building.
Could you explain that? I'm not sure about a hip roof. Explain that. What is that?
Or if there were just another gable extending out from the, over that portion of the building, I think that would be better and allow the roof of the main garage to come down because you're not having to deal with the shed intersecting, right, yeah.
I would think maybe the hip might be more appropriate because then it looked like it was not one big garage, more like...
Oh, right. There's less of it.
Less of it.
Yeah.
So, possibility.
I think we're still kind of back to the 450 square foot guideline. I don't know how you get around that, unless we would have to change the guideline, which we're not going to be able to do today. So, any other thoughts on that?
Well, the 450 square foot was put in place for a reason, and I think, once we start deviating from that, as we've discussed in prior cases, then we're essentially designing here from the horseshoe, and I think we're bound by the guidelines at 450 square feet or 5% of the lot.
I agree.
I agree.
We've got agreement on the left. Anything else? Any more comments? Or a motion?
What about the idea that Ms. Meacham had about finding the an average size of garage as opposed to waiting for the guidelines to change again, or finding a unique circumstance that applies?
Getting a survey of the 5-block radius?
Because we need to get to the place where somebody can say yes. I mean,
I would be willing to listen to that if you had. I mean, my initial idea would be every garage or every outbuilding, on either side of the street for a block or something. If we had that average, and if everybody was considerably over the 450, then then I can see that you could make an argument in my mind that it would fit in the neighborhood based on the sizes around it. That seems to be, to me, a more unique circumstance.
So you want to continue?
It doesn't seem like we do that with past cases. I mean, we consider this property, this lot, and maybe sometimes abutting properties, but not what's going on the whole block.
But there are additional factors that are talked about in the exact same guideline that talk about the 450 square feet, and that may be considered, and those include the visibility and the surrounding structures.
Right.
So why can we not consider those as possibilities when we do consider the 450 square feet when they're all a part of the exact same guideline?
And we use other surveys. I mean, for the new construction, we've used lots of surveys of roof heights and roof types and widths of buildings and to make decisions. So I think that fits into the guideline as a potential. I don't know what you're going to find. So you may find that the average size is smaller, and there you are.
Be hard.
I'm just, that would be my suggestion.
How does our new guideline affect two-story garages?
That guideline
Footprint still 450?
It just talks about footprint. It doesn't talk about height. We have separate guidelines that talk about where two-story is allowed and is not allowed.
Because that's when we would talk about adjacent abutting properties.
Right.
Yeah.
That discussion.
Let's don't go there.
Don't want to go there?
Don't go there.
We're not looking for a second story.
So,
We're not even looking for a story and a
Make it
half.
a lot easier, thanks.
so are you looking for continuance, somebody?
Are you interested in a continuance, Catherine?
Absolutely.
I move to continue HPCA 1400239, items 1 and 3, with the specific findings that additional information is required from the applicant in order to determine whether the action requested is consistent with the relevant guidelines and in compliance with the relevant sections of the code. 2010 is referenced in section C or D of the staff report.
To
February or March?
Do you want, I would prefer 60 days. March.
Do you want time?
March 4th.
Second.
Was that, okay. Moved by Mayor Joe Meacham and, excuse me, second by Neela Crank Clements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, continued to March. Thank you.
I have a question.
Okay.
So by additional information regarding item number 1, do you need additional information for that? Or are we looking specifically with additional information for item number 3?
I thought it sounded like people were fairly comfortable with the demolition.
I think just 3.
I do not need additional information.
I don't
for
need
item number
additional
1.
information on the
Okay,
demolition.
then we're going to focus on item number 3.
Yes.
I think we're also going to be looking at some redesign. Is that okay? Based on some of your comments?
Yes.
And a consensus of the area.
Go back with whatever you want.
I think that maybe those, I think that'll follow your survey.
The size, yeah, I'm not
But
concerned about that.
I'm saying,
I'm
once you
just-
see what's out there, maybe then that can all be used to, as unique circumstances.
And maybe considering some comments that were made.
Some of the comments regarding the roof lines is what I'm thinking about. Okay. Very good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
We've already continued item 5 under the continuance requests.
Good. So now we're down to other business. Says none. Now, item 8, communications and reports, administrative approvals.
Happy to answer questions about any of those if people have questions, as well as withdrawals. Nothing to report from City Council at this time. Board of Adjustment, we recently had an appeal on windows that was heard by the Board of Adjustment on December 4th, and that appeal was upheld, so our decision was overturned. We can talk about that more, possibly in a workshop, just how that all went.
Okay.
I have a question on storm windows. Could you just talk, could you kind of give us just a brief idea of what is allowed on your
storm?
It says installing.
Oh, on an administrative?
Right. So what are we looking at when we're looking for what to approve on storm windows?
So we look that the meeting rail of the storm window aligns with the meeting rail of the presumably double hung windows, that the perimeter of the storm window is going to be narrow enough that it's not obscuring, that it's going to be narrower than the frame and the sash of the historic window. It has to be an enameled finish, so it's not the shiny metal aluminum. And then it should match or complement the colors of the house.
Thank you.
Sure.
There will be a rash of roofs for Heritage Hills. My 2-block area was the epicenter of golf ball size hail. I talked to Dr. Randy Ice, who has 7 homes. He's getting 7 roofs for Heritage Hills East, so there'll be a...
I think our area had pretty good hailstorm. My car was pretty much...
This was right before Christmas, right? Yeah.
Who would expected a hailstorm in December? So, okay. It's true. It could happen any time. Anything from Planning Commission? And I'm going to remember to say anything from Municipal Counselor's Office. All right. Can you make something up? No. Okay, so the next meeting date, the next regular scheduled meeting for the Historical Preservation Commission is February 4th at 2 p.m. New information is due by 4 p.m. Tuesday, January 13th. New applications for the meeting were already received, January 6th. The next regular scheduled workshop for the Historical Preservation Commission is Wednesday, February 11th, 11:30 to 1:30 at 420 West Main, Suite 900. Any items from commissioners besides hailstorm damage? Any other citizens left? No?
Well, what are we going, are we going to schedule something to discuss garages in the future?
We have the workshop scheduled for February 11th, so we can certainly talk about.
Is that going to be the, are we going to have do we need to present, or is there anything that anybody needs to do if we are going
Research.
to? Research.
Feel free on that or any other topics you want on a workshop to call me or email me with, I think we need to talk about A, B, C, and D. If there's something, we usually don't distribute a lot of materials before the workshop, but we certainly can do that, make it available.
Is there material available that was used to get to the 450?
We did just some kind of playing around with site plans, with average lot sizes, looking at county assessors and square footage of garages. We looked at recently approved garages and tried to come up with that 450 or 5% to see what that
unusual number.
like.
We also remember we talked about the standard parking size.
Yeah, we talked about how large
9 by
a
18.
typical parking space should be. So,
But, you know, it is small in some ways.
There was a Heritage Hills garage that was quite large with another apartment behind it or on the side, I recall, on 20th Street. Huge.
yeah, we had several in a row that were very large with additional living quarters attached, that sort of thing. So that was certainly what spurred that.
Preempted that.
But, you know, we'll get into it, but the standard garage is 20 by 20.
Right.
Then this would have, that's 400, plus a little extra space for some storage, so it really can be done. Maybe not with two single doors, you know.
Right. That's what I thought. I mean, I was like, isn't a standard 20 by 20?
Yeah, but maybe not with the single doors that we like. So.
Which is something to consider, too, because actually, you know...
We're having a workshop right now.
Oh, no.
Right. They make a difference, you know, especially since you do see the doors from the street.
Instead of one big door, which is...
Oh, I do have a comment. You know, that we did have somebody in my neighborhood come before us for a CA, and in the end, they just decided to repair, as it was, the garage doors with the unusual design. 28. They repaired those and painted them.
I noticed that.
Was that the unique design of the door? Was that one?
Yes, they did. They just, I think it was it appeared to be, you know, an applied wood to a...
On top of something?
On top of something, and they removed that and applied the exact material in the same identical design and painted it and left it on the hanging door.
That was a neat design, that door, if I'm thinking of this on
It
the
was
right
very
one.
unique.
With the,
So
Just
they
to report
replaced it
that,
all.
looks nice.
They replaced it all. I wonder if they had a CA for that.
Well, they just repaired it. I mean, it was exactly the same. Yeah, they did not change, they did not put a garage door. They left it on the, you know, whatever you call it. I think they took it apart and repaired the wheels. I mean, it was closed, so it may not work, but if they went to that much trouble, I'm going to assume that they got the wheels working again.
Okay, so they get a medal, right? Okay. All right. Any other items from commissioners? No citizens, so we're adjourned.